You're listening to All Things Sports with Mike Davis.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? Glad you can join me on another podcast of All Things Sports with Mike Davis. I thank you for including my podcast into your day. If you're listening on Spotify, follow the podcast. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff. Go to the Facebook page or any of the social media contacts you see in the description box. That is to get in contact with Joe for any comments or suggestions. I won't take up much more of your time. Let's get into it. All right, so on today's podcast, I wanted to talk about former head coach George Karl. If you don't know who he is, he coached the Seattle Supersonics, now known as the OKC Thunder. He coached the Milwaukee Bucks. That was back when Ray Allen and Big Dog Glenn Robinson played for them. He almost got that team to an NBA Finals, believe it or not. That team was one game away from playing the Lakers, but instead it was Allen Iverson and his Sixers going on to face the Los Angeles Lakers, and he was also head coach of Carmelo Anthony's Denver Nuggets. Now, recently, I saw in an article, he said that I respect players that win in the playoffs. That's the ultimate respect. I joke all the time that the NBA plays an 82-game exhibition season. And there are a lot of great games in that exhibition season, a lot of great performances. But Broadway is the NBA playoffs. Only the best go to Broadway. And my question, what I want to know, is it true? Is what George Karl said in that article, is there any truth to that? And look, I'm just going to come out and just tell you, yeah, I believe that. I totally believe that. You look at guys, like I say, looking at Mitch Richmond. Mitch Richmond is all the time always omitted because you didn't see Mitch Richmond in the playoffs. But Mitch Richmond was a guy who gave Michael Jordan fits. And not just Michael Jordan, he gave the whole league fits. But you never hear anybody talk about Mitch Richmond because we didn't see Mitch Richmond playing in what George Karl calls it Broadway, the NBA playoffs. But we look at a guy like a Robert Horry who wasn't really didn't have much regular season success, but he was a guy that you could depend on come playoff time. He was a guy who was going to show up when it mattered the most. And Robert Horry, as we all know, had some memorable games. We know the shot against the Sacramento Kings where he beat them with a three. We know the shot, well, not the shot, but the game against Philadelphia where there was a game he took over in Philly, and it was all his show. And then even in San Antonio, when he was with the Spurs and they played the Pistons, when they knocked out Detroit in 7 games, there was a game where Robert Horry went off. I believe he had 30 or 35 in that game. And there was a big play at the end of the game where San Antonio won, where I forget who it was. I think Rasheed Wallace went to go double Manu Ginobili, which left Horry open. And at that point in time of Horry's career, in the playoffs, you don't leave that guy open. They left him open. He drained the three, and San Antonio went on to win that game. But Robert Horry, yeah, that is a guy who, regular season, you're not really checking for him, but he's a guy who's going to show up in the playoffs. And I have to agree with George Karl. The 82 regular season is just an exhibition. I have to agree. Look, we've been here before, though, with the whole 82 game season. Is it too much? Would the NBA be better off playing just a 50-game season? This is going to be a topic that's going to just keep coming up until there's a definite answer, So I look at it as look, if you're watching on TV, I can see that the NBA season, the 82 game schedule, can be a long season. You know, for a lot of people like George Karl, it's just an exhibition. Now, I will speak as a season ticket holder from my Atlanta Hawks. Look, I'm selfish. I want all 41 home games because I love basketball just that much. And there's a big difference between going to a live NBA game and watching it on TV. The game moves much faster when you see it on person as opposed to watching it on TV. You know, and like I said, look, I'm selfish. Being a season ticket holder, I want all 41 games. And then there are some games where I end up going to some away games. You know, there was one year I went to, the Hawks were playing in Detroit, and the next night they played in DC against the Wizards. I went to both those away games. Don't ask me why. But I did. So going to the games is very different from just watching it on TV. Like I said, if you're watching on TV as opposed to going, you're probably going to be in that pack with George Karl and saying, look, 82 games, it's just an exhibition season. You know, you really don't need 82 games, but it is what it is. And, you know, a lot of times, look, by the time you get to February, you know who the playoff teams are, you know. So that comes in to consideration. You know, what's the reason for playing 82 games? We know who the playoff teams, who are the real teams, and who are the pretenders by the time we get to February. By the time we get to February, we're just playing for seeding now. You know, that's pretty much it. Every now and then you'll have, you know, an 8 seed fighting with a you know, the 9th or 10th seed, and that happens every now and again, but it's not something that happens all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the playing games were added this year for the playoffs. So you're gonna have 10 teams. 1 through 6 are the only guaranteed spots. You're gonna have 7 through 10 play for the final 2 spots in the NBA. In the NBA playoffs. The playoff games were added because I think the NBA now is going to decide if they shorten the NBA season. Now, this is just my thinking. If they shorten the NBA season, they're going to have something to compensate for those lost games. And so why not just have a play-in, kind of like college basketball? And, you know, like I said, that's just my thoughts. You know, I think by having a shorter season, this also gives more teams a chance to make the NBA playoffs and make the NBA more exciting than it has been. And it cuts down on wear and tear with the players. It cuts down on the back-to-back games that these players complain about now. I think it solves a lot of things. Now, I think what the NBA is doing right now is they're giving it a test run. They're going to see how it works out this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if sometime in the future the NBA does in fact cut down on the regular season. Look, this season is already shortened as well, not a full 82 game schedule. So I think the NBA, I think they're listening, and they think they can get more bang for the buck by shortening the season, adding a play-in playoff spot for the lower seeds. And I think that the NBA thinks it will be a win for them. So those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on the whole thing, what George Karl had to say about he respects the NBA players that are made in the playoffs? It's Broadway. And, you know, myself alluding to the whole playoff play-in situation. Again, what are your thoughts? Leave it down in the comments and let me know. All right, so let's go ahead and transition into this day in sports history. April 27th, back in 1983, Nolan Ryan becomes the strikeout king, passing Walter Johnson, striking out a batter for the 3,509th time in his career. That's one pitcher I wish I could have seen. I believe he was still pitching when I was, you know, a kid, but I wasn't really paying attention to baseball and Nolan Ryan at that particular point. But that is one picture that I really wish I could have really just sat down and watched a complete game with Nolan Ryan pitching. Hey, look, that's all I got for you today, folks. I thank you for including my podcast into your day. If you're listening on Spotify, follow the podcast. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff. Go to the Facebook page to get in contact with the show for any comments or any suggestions. Also, click on any of the social media likes to get in contact with the show. That's it. That's all I got, guys. You've been listening to All Things Sports with Mike Davis. And remember, it's your world. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm out. Peace.
You're listening to All Things Sports with Mike Davis.